Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the greatest recordings ever. And today we're talking about an album, a whole album, that contains two symphonies, but they definitely are part of the greatest recordings ever. It's this LSO Live, Beethoven Symphonies 4 and 8, featuring the LSO, the London Symphony Orchestra, under Bernard Haitink on the orchestra's own label. Now, this is one of those discs that just really sneaks up on you, takes you by surprise. Bernard Haitink is an interesting conductor. He's an interesting conductor because he was always at his best when he was rooting for the underdog, when he did things to works that nobody really took as seriously until he sort of cruised in and showed us just how magnificently they could be done. And this is one of those. I mean, there are so many examples of this in his output. There's the Brahms' First Serenade. There's Shostakovich's 12th Symphony. You know, these pieces that everybody sort of poo-poos, and then he has them played to the nines, and they just sound amazing. Well, this is a case in point, because these are the two stepchildren of the mature Beethoven symphonies, numbers 4 and 8. I mean, the ones people tend not to care about. I happen to adore both of them. And I think the more connoisseurish you are in your enjoyment of Beethoven, the more you begin to appreciate the fourth and the eighth, especially the fourth, because the fourth, people talk about the Eroica as Beethoven's kind of mature work, but in a way it was kind of experimental. The fourth is where he settles down and really shows us what he can do. With the smallest orchestra of any of the symphonies, only one flute, and an incredible feeling of motion, of athleticism, of goal-directed purpose, which really is in some respects the essence of Beethoven's art. This idea of striving for something, that positive, wonderful, the end is in sight and it's going to be great when we get there. That's Beethoven. And the fourth is the symphony where he really, really makes it about that. It's not that these other works don't have those qualities. They do. But the fourth is about that. And it gets routinely underplayed as a result. It's really a tough, fibrous work. It can take a lot of muscle. It really can. And the eighth, well, the eighth is funny. So, no one's going to like it because people have no sense of humor. It does contain possibly the most volcanic climax in all of Beethoven, the return to the recapitulation in the first movement, which is just astonishing. It's so over the top that it's almost funny. And it's a witty and brilliant and also very dense, very compact, like the fourth in that sense. A very compact piece, very densely scored. The orchestral tutti, the part where everyone's playing together, they just have an enormous amount of punch and weight, even though the actual form and intent is largely humorous and rather lighthearted. So anyway, for various reasons, they are the two stepchildren of the mature Beethoven symphonies, and Haitink excels at both. He really does. But his approach is a very interesting one because, Haitink already had made two Beethoven cycles, and both of them were noted for their dullness and lack of interesting virtually anything. The first was with the London Philharmonic, and it was made because the Concertgebouw did not believe that as a young conductor he was ready to do a Beethoven cycle with them. That was very interesting, actually. And so he said, well, I'll show you. And he did it with the London Philharmonic, and he didn't show them at all. Even he said it was worthless later on. And they gave that Beethoven cycle to Eugen Joachim, who was the music director in tandem with Haitink when Haitink first took over, because they felt that a young Dutch guy was just not famous enough and illustrious enough to be at the head of this iconic and nation-defining orchestra in a Beethoven cycle. So that's really very interesting. So he made his first one with the London Phil, and they were right. He wasn't ready. Then he made a digital cycle with the Concertgebouw, and it was decent, and it showed the Concertgebouw playing, beautifully, as they almost always do, but it had virtually nothing of significance to say about any of the music. It was just nicely played. A decent, nice subscription Beethoven cycle. Like, if you went to see it in an evening concert, you'd come home and say, oh, that was nice. Anyway, and then he remade his Beethovens for the last time with the London Symphony Orchestra, an entire cycle. And he had by then absorbed some of the strictures of the period instrument movement. Now, a lot of conductors jumped on the bandwagon and they had nothing to say about the music, and they still had nothing to say about the music. I think for Haitink, given the quality of the cycle as a whole, which is really pretty good, it's very good for the most part, but I think the use of some, quicker tempos and tighter rhythms and hard timpani and more pounding drums and whatever, it seemed to liberate him a little bit. I think he felt perhaps that he could apply this technique and really rethink his view of Beethoven. So whatever the reason, this is his best Beethoven cycle. Now, the big symphonies, the ones that everybody does, and everybody, the 5 and 7 and, all those, the one I have to wear a tie for, the last one, I think that for those works, again, he maybe he felt everyone else had done it better. I don't know. He was a very curmudgeonly kind of guy, kind of dour. And I don't know what was going through his head. But with 4 and 8, he really could get behind the underdogs and show something. And he does. I mean, the playing is fabulous. The sonics are tremendous. The interpretations are as fresh and vibrant and vital as any you're going to hear by anybody ever. And it's astounding and really salutary because, it was very easy when Haitink in his late career was running around doing all the same stuff and recording it millions of times. It was very easy to write him off as a force in music, an interpretive force. But no, you have to listen. You have to keep on listening. This version of disc of Symphonies 4 and 8 out of that whole cycle is the one to get because it really has something youthful and fresh and exciting to say about both works. They're both extraordinarily fine performances. And they are certainly, I belong in the category of greatest recordings ever. They really do. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.